Um, Excellent. Hello, everybody. An official warm welcome to the second session for Africa's Youth Voices online conference series 2022. We are extremely happy to have you here and have you present in the space. For anyone who doesn't know what Africa's Youth Voices conference series is, essentially it's an advocacy and communications place and a conference where we as young people in Africa can come together, build solidarity, formulate authentic messages and understandings of climate justice and injustice as it relates to our issues on the continent. So that's in essence what it is in a very short, crude summary of it. We're undergoing this process of 5 months engaging with individuals and being in this space. Today, we'll kind of break into a little bit more about message development and how that looks when we take up campaigns in the future. And so we've got 3 more sessions after this one. On the 8th of September, following that, it's, I think it's something of October, I forget. But then there's also on the 3rd of November for the last session. And then you've got a surprise one at the end that you're not supposed to know about after COP. But we are extremely happy that you are here. What we are going to do today is kind of go in a bit of a circle. I think what we'll do is we'll split into 2 breakout rooms. There's enough people for 2 breakout rooms today. And so we'll split into those spaces and kind of do a little bit of a check-in. But before that, I want to say thank you for being here. My name is Gabriel. I'll be holding space alongside Sarah. Sarah, do you want to check in how you're doing today?
Hi, everyone. So nice to see you all here. Yes, I'm Sarah, also with African Climate Alliance, and I'll be co-facilitating with Gabriel today. And yeah, as Gabriel said, we're going to go into 2 breakout rooms and just check in with each other on who we are, where we're coming from, how we're doing today, and also what drew you to this conference, and what do you hope to get out of it today? Or what do we hope to get out of it? Because we all, it's not about us speaking to you as facilitators, but us all being in the room together and co-creating the space. So what drew us to this, and what is it that we want out of this? So that is how we're going to do it. And just for ease of time, we'll split into the breakout rooms. It just also allows for us to get to know each other a little bit better. But I'll put the questions in the chat as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. While I kind of get that started, start thinking about those questions that Sarah mentioned. I think they're entirely needed for us to kind of really break into the space today. But hopefully you'll kind of get to know those you're sharing a room with, so to speak. And we can kind of really build a solid relationship or begin to build a relationship with one another in this hour and a half, 2 hours that we have with one another. So yeah, I'm going to put you in your breakout rooms right now. If at any point you have a question, let us know. I will be popping into your breakout rooms just to see how you're doing, to see if you need any assistance, if you need any help. I know that you're more than capable, but I do also understand that it's really nice when someone's there just to offer an ear. And so yeah, we're putting you into breakout rooms and then going from there. If someone would be so lovely to help explain the questions to anyone who just joins and bring them into the space when they join your breakout room, that would be amazing. Otherwise, you may press the join breakout room link as soon as it pops up on your screen.
I'll also just repost the questions in the chat for those who've just joined. We're doing check-in questions on how we're doing, who we are, what drew us to this conference, and what do we hope to get out of it.
I see Milima says, hi, I'm from Zambia, a youth advocate and a member of Activista Zambia. Lusaka chapter. I take interest in pride of climate advocacy and environmental defense. So happy to have been a part of this process, motivated to get on board to take part of COP27 series because of my inevitable passion for the environment. I look forward to growing network and relations with fellow right-minded young people, and look forward to learn more about climate change and advocacy. And so what I'm going to do is, as we wait for everyone to kind of fall back into the rooms officially, Sarah, if you can crank that music up again, we can get started in a little bit. But hello again, for those who have just joined, and for those who have come back from the breakout rooms. Don't worry, we're going to begin with the next section of our journey, basically, together today. I see Sarah said that she muted herself and ended up jamming to her own music. So what we're going to do right now, though, is just open the space for maybe like 2 or 3 people just to share what their thoughts were about the question of what brought people together in the different spaces. So maybe someone from group 1 would like to share, and I'll take the first 3 hands that I see that come up. Just on your experience of what you felt and thought about the question surrounding what drew you to the conference and your interests. If not, I'll pick on you. Mohini. No, I'm joking. But in case you want to, Mohini, the space is here for you.
Yes. So I think that there was kind of a consensual feel in my group. I think we were group 2, of wanting to come together and learn, relearn, unlearn from everyone from different parts of Africa, which I thought was such a beautiful concept. And it's so cool that this COP27 is bringing us together to discuss and to understand where everyone's coming from different areas and situations. Yeah, I think that was just the main feedback that I was hearing.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that. Yeah, and thank you for your group for having such a fruitful discussion. Does anyone from group 1 want to share how they felt? And then we'll have the plenary session space that I was in, kind of do a bit of the sharing. No one from group 1 wants to speak. I heard a rumor that you wanted to share everything and start talking about the homework from last time. No one?
Okay, I think I will have to talk.
Hey, Gloria, thank you.
Hi. So yes, from group 1, I connected with a number of people, I think 10, and it was really great. I connected with Ivan, Lucy, Tuwera, and all of the others. And I think basically everyone was there to, everyone shared that they are here or they are looking forward to the conference as well to learn from each other and build network as well, and also share their ideas. And we also had one person who's Frida also sharing that she's new to this whole climate change and environment stuff. So this is a great platform for her to also learn more about it, especially from the African context and how we are dealing with each of our challenges in our respective countries. So yeah, basically that's it. And yeah, I also look forward to connecting with a lot of young people here. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for taking the stand there. And I think it's situations like that where we must just dive in. So it's great that you could. Does anyone from the main space where I was in want to do a check-in? Because we ended up having 3 breakout rooms, people. One of the main space just ended up staying a breakout room. Anyone keen? If not, I will. Okay. So basically, just highlighting and emphasizing the importance of finding climate justice interesting, finding passion in the work that we're doing. A lot of the work and a lot of the focus was on, most affected groups. So it's youth, those living in frontline communities. So there was talk about tree planting, water, energy. There was also a talk about women and young girls being engaged in different spaces. And that being one of the reasons why we're all here is because we're part of a movement that is something that's driving us and pulling us together. And so I can't wait to watch this recording back and just kind of, you can't even watch the recording back because the breakout rooms aren't recorded. But I think it'll be beautiful for us to have these conversations going forward in the different platforms and arenas and spaces that we want to, which brings me to, before we kind of go into just a bit of a discussion about last month's session, is just a bit of logistics. So session registration works this way, is if you've already registered for Africa's Youth Voices, you do not have to register again. We will send you the new link and we will send you the minutes and everything from the last session. So everyone here right now will continuously get the link until you say, stop sending me the link, then we'll remove you. But in essence, that's what we hope to do, is that it makes it easier for you not to have to keep registering for each session. Following that, we also want to let you know that it would be great if right now you could go to the little dots on your name and change your name to the name that you're registered with, so that we can make sure that you get your data reimbursement for those who want it. Data reimbursement will take 7 days. If there are complications, please don't shout at us. We are a very small team, but we are trying to do our best. And we will make sure that you get your data reimbursed. We promise you that. But it's very important that you fill out the form that we send you to make sure that you get the data reimbursement. If there are any complications, then you make contact with the contact number available in the data reimbursement form. And then lastly, a little bit of logistics. Our notes and recordings, those will also be shared after each session. So maybe next week, Tuesday, everyone will have the notes and recordings from this week's session, as well as access to the previous session as well. Awesome. So at the end of last month, in essence, what we did was really begin to ask ourselves, what is it? And, what is our understanding of COP27? We were lucky and happy enough to have Thando Lukuko from the coordinator of South African Climate Action Network come and speak to us about what COP27 is, what COP is, and the understanding and importance of COP being on the African continent this year is to us as young people, is to us as the future of this continent, future leaders, future change makers of this continent. We began to speak about the different roadmaps and the different ways of message development. And today we'll break into that a bit more, a little closer to the top of the hour. But for right now, I'm going to ask Sarah to share her screen with the Jamboard as we kind of break into a discussion. But before that, actually, Sarah, not the Jamboard screen, could you share your screen with the questions that we asked as a takeaway task from last month's session, or the last session, sorry. Awesome. So basically what we asked you as a takeaway task is, because we don't like the word homework, because we're not kids who need to do homework. These are tasks that we hope are useful for our growth and development in the space. The reason that we have these monthly sessions so far spaced out from each other and not one after the other is because we want you to go back to your communities, back to your groups, back to your organizations and initiatives, ask these questions and come back so that you can represent them in authentic ways, so that we as a collective can represent the African youth voice, or Africa's youth voice in authentic ways in the build-up to COP27. But basically we asked, what did you and your communities think about the learnings and thoughts from the last session and its importance of COP27? What is your organization and or community roadmap to COP? So we've had this idea of a roadmap to COP. So what are the different steps that we take to get to COP27? And so maybe that's something that's a social media campaign. Maybe that's something that's you're doing something on the ground. Maybe you're mobilizing in September. Maybe you're having a local KOI, which is a conference of the youth. Maybe it's just you having a small community action, and that being something that's so profound and powerful. And then lastly, what do you want? What do your constituents and your communities want our leaders to know? Because if you recall, we spoke about this concept of what we wanted to do. We said an AU letter. So it's the letter to the African Union, and hoping to kind of get our voices and our needs and our wants heard in those spaces. So what I'm going to do right now is just pop in the chat these questions again so it sits in your mind. Even those who haven't been a part of last month's session, this is an opportunity for you to kind of also engage in this space. As Sarah kind of puts them up on the Jamboard, and we look at them afterward. But yeah, so I'm really gonna just open the space for you to just ask yourself these questions again, and just go for it. But what I would like actually would be great if you want to use the chat. Feel free to use the chat. If you're not going to use the chat, that's also okay. But the hope is that you communicate in this space today. If you're going to speak, it would be great if you could raise your hand, or you could make a little something in the chat, or you can speak when you just hear silence. But there we go. In the chat are the questions, and I'm looking forward to hearing the feedback. Maybe we'll start with the first question. Hi. What did your communities think about, or what do you currently think, and your community and organization currently think about the importance of COP27 and COP being on the African continent? Otsile, I saw you go.
I'm so sorry. I spoke at the same moment as you. I apologize. I did miss the last session, but many of the discussion points were brought up in the meeting that the Gauteng arm of Fridays for Future had. Now, unfortunately, around the constituency, we are a really small organization. We launched 4 months ago, the Gauteng arm, but we have been able to engage with a lot of young people who are our main constituents. And so I'm going to be just addressing a few of the questions that are up there. And mainly I want to start with the first one, which is what do we think about the learnings and the thoughts from the last session, and the importance of COP27? Essentially, I feel that from the Fridays for Future team, what we discussed was that we don't want COP to be another summit where like things are discussed, but then nothing really comes of it. At least the Gauteng arm of Fridays for Future, that was the discussion that we had. And so one of the things that we said is that we'd really want to see coming from COP is that we see a greater level of accountability with regards to the pledges that are made there, or really the agreements that are made there. We see often that there's and I'm sure all of us here can agree that there is a massive disconnect between what is discussed there and what leaders tend to agree to, and then what they actually come and they do. There's a disconnect between the policies that they lay out and the plans that they give to us there, and then the things that they actually implement on the ground level. And also there's a lot of, unfair bias from not unfair bias, but a lot of misunderstanding from the global north around the issues that really impact us here in the global south, and many of the things that we actually find as a necessity in order to institute a just transition or deal effectively with climate, and also address the justice aspect of the climate crisis. And so there's a multitude of things. I hope I'm not speaking too fast. I can see that the sticky notes are moving very quickly. So I'll just try slow down my pace. And so what we said is that we want to see, like I said, a greater level of accountability, and we'd like to see leaders from the global north engaging valuably and productively with young people from the global south and some of our representatives. I mean, we understand that obviously our representatives are essential to the process there at COP, but at the same time, we also have this fear that many of them don't really understand what we here on the ground want. And so that is something that we feel is part of it. I see my comrade Miguel just commented. The comrade Miguel is part of the Fridays for Future Gauteng team, and he and I just I think we can both speak around this. It is a massive component of it. The second question, let me open the comments. The second question was, oh, the roadmap. So I guess I sort of covered that. Here's the thing, I wasn't really sure what roadmap would potentially mean or what it would represent. So I think more or less like the things that we hope to see from COP more or less sort of dictate a roadmap. I'm not sure. I think I'll get some clarity for that after I do the third one. And the third one is what our constituents want our leaders to know. Obviously, I addressed that greater level of engagement and we'd want to see valuable discussion. But I think what's more important is that one of the larger themes that we've seen a lot as we engage more and more with young people, as we try and recruit more young people into the climate space, is that there's this question around, okay, I'm here and I'm protesting, but like, how am I engaged in the process? How will I be involved in the process? And it ties back to that question of like how young people are involved, not just in the policy making space, but in the implementation of the policies. I mean, often, like I said earlier, we see a disconnect between what we negotiate and what we ask for, and then what is implemented on the ground. And so the constituencies tend to feel, or not constituencies, but more so members, people that are part of this movement, tend to feel that perhaps if we could have more young people in the implementation of these policies, in the implementation of many of the things that we're advocating and asking for, then we can possibly see a greater level of engagement with what young people want and with what not just climate activists, but people in general are asking for, and also the sort of things that we want implemented and that we'd like to see happen. And so it is a very broad, and obviously we can go into details of everything if you'd like to. Sorry, my phone. And obviously we can go into the details of that if you'd like to. And but that's more or less what I think from the Fridays for Future Gauteng team we see. And if there are any Fridays for Futures from throughout the continent that perhaps I have not had the opportunity to engage with, I'm going to abuse this platform as person speaking. I'd like to say, please reach out to myself or my comrade Miguel. Just send us a private chat, and we'd love to engage with you and just sort of build a greater level of consensus just generally around everything. And I'd like to thank ACA for creating this platform as well. That is all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Vitsile, for sharing that. I think these are the spaces where we need to kind of engage and build that kind of solidarity. We'd also be happy to connect you to our friends in Fridays for Future Malawi. And so I'll touch base with you after this. I know that thousands of people keep saying that I need to meet you. And so it's a pleasure to actually have a conversation with you today. And so, yeah, it's really great to be in this space. Yeah, I think this is also kind of talking about a platform that we need to engage on. And so I'll share a bit about our ideas for platforms that we want to engage on and have for Africa's youth voices, so that we can continue conversations throughout the month. But we'll get to that a bit later on. For right now, tagging in someone else. Does anyone want to talk about what they learn, what your communities and your comrades, the people that work with you, your constituents thought about the last session, the importance of COP27, or maybe just talk about the different work and projects that you're wanting to kind of embark on or start. Yeah, it'll be great. Cool people. Anyone wanting to jump in? Mohini, go for it.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Go for it, Mohini.
So I don't represent a specific organization, but I was part of a local Extinction Rebellion group that fizzled out just due to capacity. But after having our last session, I kind of reconnected with them and reconnected with the communities that we had spoken to as an organization, just wanting to have a discussion. And obviously I felt like I couldn't answer the questions that we left off with by myself. So I chose to kind of talk, and it was really interesting. And I think it was I'm really glad I got to learn from people local here in the Eastern Cape. And I think a common theme was the idea of climate justice being colonized and it not being inclusive of Indigenous knowledge, Indigenous people, and Indigenous practices, especially in the COP spaces. There was also discussion of the idea that often the talk around climate justice is about mitigating these issues that are in the future, that are coming, versus how there are people currently near to us who are facing the impacts of climate change. Like locally, we have a drought, and there are people who don't have access to water, and it's a real effect. And there is no conversation of how this links up to climate change. There is no conversation on how we can implement adaptation or safety plans right now, instead of the idea, and then there is importance in mitigating climate change, of course, but also the conversation of people who are affected by this in this moment, often in the global south, often the people who, or most of the time, the people who are less responsible for climate change than others. But yes, I think for now that's me.
Thanks so much, Mohini. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that, I think we had discussed this in the last session as well, where you'd said that you didn't have a kind of local group that you were originally a part of. And so it was really great to hear that you kind of touched base with the groups that you could in the space, because it's about kind of the authentic voice. And I'm really glad that your voice could be contributed to the space, but as well as the community that you're in. Thank you. Appreciate it. Titus, I'm going to read your message. Well, my learnings from the previous session puts the entire continent of Africa to a clear understanding that Africans are key in a race to attaining climate justice. And the very importance of COP27 due to what's happening in Egypt is an eye-opener that we as Africans must engage in each and every global aspect basing on indigenous knowledge as we oppose scientific knowledge. And so I think, Titus, your point about kind of us needing to come forward with solutions, African people in Africa needing to be the solution, is so crucial and critical. I think we heard a little bit about that in Mohini's sharing, based on what their community or what their breakout room in the beginning had mentioned. And so it's really, really great to see kind of further echoing there. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Titus. I appreciate it, and I'm really grateful to kind of hear that. Ruth is saying we need to get started by mitigating different projects such as beekeeping, tree planting, and other projects which will help us in the fight for climate change. Fight against climate change. And indeed, Africa is at the center of these solutions to climate change. I completely agree. How can we have solutions from somewhere else to issues in Africa? It's impossible. And so it's really great to see that echoed further. I think I was having a conversation recently, and the line was, African injustices require Pan-African solutions. And I think that's an absolutely beautiful concept. And so, yeah, it's really, really great to kind of hear that. Does anyone else want to share, perhaps? We've got a few more minutes left in this space before we move on to the next chapter of today's session.
Yes, I'd like to share something.
Go for it.
So regarding what I learned from the last session, also like Mohini, I'm also just a student, so I'm not really related to any governmental like organization or something like that. But as an individual, I would say I learned a lot from the first session, and it allowed me to reflect a lot on the conversation that we had as a group. And it allowed me to build on my foundation and on my knowledge regarding climate change, adaptation and mitigation, and the protection of the environment, and also the protection of those people who are most at risk due to climate change. And also touching on what you said earlier, I learned that everyone is important in this conversation and towards achieving solutions and, presenting change to these cross-cutting issues. And in terms of, for question 3, for what we would want our leaders to know, I think like the best way to tackle the issue is also by learning from the past. And that means that different approaches are required to tackle climate change because an issue may become more complex over time. And that obviously means we can't offer the same solutions from the issues we faced perhaps last year or even a few months ago to the issues that we are currently facing. And this is especially true because COP26 didn't fully achieve its desired outcome, and that obviously puts pressure on the leaders to successfully execute COP27. And then leading on from that, a lot of the IPCC reports show that climate change and disaster risks will obviously only intensify over time. So it's crucial that during this time, we all work together at the local, national, and on a global scale. So we would need better implementation of solutions. And that also means offering solutions that are suited to African countries, because that was something that wasn't done in the past. And it creates a big issue for developing countries that are actually trying to fulfill the goals that COP sets out each year. Thank you.
I'm just putting in the chat there what IPCC means, but thank you. I saw a plus from Lisa in the chat there for you. I think what you say about the ever-changing space that we're in, and solutions from even last week can't be the solutions for tomorrow, but we can definitely learn from the past and learn from where we kind of could find solutions and kind of adapt that to where we need to be. Yeah, I'm going to enjoy listening to this recording while I draw up the notes, guys. I'm telling you now. But thank you so much for sharing that. And I definitely think it brings a perspective to the space here that is crucial for kind of developing what we want from our leaders. I think your point about us needing a win at this COP, because last year's COP was not as wasn't what it was needed to be. Yeah, you know what the danger is. It was just not what it needed to be. And so I'm really grateful to know that we are going to kind of be we're going to kind of build our list of quote unquote demands for what we want our leaders to do and stand up for in this space. And so moving into kind of spaces for kind of more conversation. Yeah, I've seen some private messages come my way, and so I'll read them. Governments need to set up strict regulations that attend to sustainability. And so I'll pop that to your message, Sarah, if you need it. But governments need to set up strict regulations that attend to sustainability. And I think that's a very straight up, this is what we want. Thank you very much. See you later. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate seeing it. And I see Moano says another thing is that it's important is a successful litigation when viewing our points. Such national matters should be addressed with sensitivity, like the recent COVID, it's airborne climate impact on low carbon. I'm struggling to understand that, but the relevant consuming cities in Africa states more force is needed from us as a youth on the ground. So what I'm understanding is a little bit from that message is, in essence, that we need a strong push from us as young people on the ground up when it comes to the injustices, or not the injustices, but the impacts on health and well-being and its relation to climate change. When it comes to it, for example, in South Africa, when we went into lockdown in it's been a while, guys, 2020, the beginning of 2020, our Minister for Fisheries, Forestries and Energy and Environment, Barbara Creasy, had allowed for sulfur dioxide emissions to be released at a greater rate than they would have been released with the restrictions that she had already set. And so it was quite funny to see a respiratory disease, something that affects your lungs, be in the space. And then our Minister for Environment, Forestries and Fisheries allowing, more toxic fumes to be released into the atmosphere during such a time. So yeah, I definitely agree. I see actually what I said, I think to build up to COP27 negotiations, Africa now needs to change the discourse of climate justice and acknowledge the existence of the problem and understand that 4% of emissions is not zero, but we need to look within Africa and start from somewhere and look at the best solutions working for Africa and the best science of Africa or technology for Africa. I'm just really excited to see these things come forward, guys. So thank you. And then I see the humanitarian community needs to further. I know Sarah's going to jump around and dash around, but don't worry, the chat will be saved, Sarah. We will have opportunities to make sure everything is brought together. The humanitarian community needs to further articulate its collective role in implementing solutions to climate crisis. They should use their presence to influence and mobilize urgent climate change adaptation and ensure that those who are at high risk are protected. The community should also use its expertise and collaborate with organizations, institutes, and government to ensure that these people, these vulnerable people are considered at all levels of decision-making process. Simultaneously, this add-on, guys. Simultaneously, we need to foster dialogue and coordination among all appropriate stakeholders with, I'm going to throw in a word there, active dialogue with all appropriate stakeholders with the aim of developing cooperation, collaboration regarding all relevant work across the board. I'm loving it. Then moving on to Vincent, it says, it's my first session, but from my perspective, there's a need for more local challenges and involvement in practice. Mostly this is possible through the youth, us, getting more involved in COP, and not just being involved, but also bringing practices learned into our communities and levels of society. I love that. It's kind of like, we just read something that speaks about a continental-wide something and then a national something, and then we read our local effort. This is beautiful. Then reading on, the problem is that this is a private message, you don't see it, but the problem is that developing countries, is that with developing countries, we are already struggling with things like poverty. For example, most people can't afford to buy electricity, so they have no choice but to burn trees and to use them for charcoal. So the need here is not only to create rural-urban awareness, but we also need a lot of investment, i.e. in solar systems in rural areas. So I'm going to pop that in the chat for you, Sarah, so you don't have to worry about typing it all out. But I completely agree. There's a level of awareness and community engagement and building that needs to come forward in that space. And so thank you for that. Then I see a message saying, I'm the Mandela Day and Outreach Program Coordinator from Nelson Mandela Foundation. This year, our main focus is food security and climate change. Our call to action is do what you can with what you have where you are. COP27 therefore has the same mandate as us and we would like to participate. I think that's a beautiful, 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 three beautifuls over there, kind of way of kind of looking at it, is looking at what's existing, what you have and what difference you can make in your space. And then looking at Simon's message before, I want more of this to come into the chat, but also we have a different section to move on to today. And so Simon says, but keep it going, people, keep it going. Also, if you were like, actually, Gabriel, I didn't have an opportunity to say anything, you have my email. And if you don't, I will send you my email and then you'll have my email. But I sent a link to everyone, so you should have my email address. Please do not share it on the internet. If you do, I'll have to lose that email address and start all over again. But leaders should know, Simon says, should acknowledge that Africans have solutions to their problems. The political economy in climate change must stop, and African countries should be given the liberty to implement their policies without political interference from the West. Now let me read that again. I'm joking. But I am very happy to see that we're kind of looking at an African solution to issues that we face on the continent. And so that's really promising to see. Yeah, I think what I'll do now is just check for any open mics to see if anyone's willing to speak, because I can't keep reading. I mean, I can, but I want to see if anyone wants to speak. Constance, do you maybe want to share? Maybe Mari or Panache, do you want to share? Anyone want to kind of just vocalize their thoughts about the questions on the screen before we move into the next session?
Well, thank you very much. Yeah. Gabriel, this is Mirimo Siosure from Zambia. Yep, so last session, which was our first session, was fully packed. I did enjoy the session, like, honestly, it was really wonderful. So we learned a lot in the first session, and among the takeaway questions that we were tasked to go out there, we did find out that the communities are proudly happy for us as young people leading dialogues that are meant to facilitate change. And this change, it is positive change for Africa as a continent. So the community is really proud of us as young people. Yeah. So the other thing is that out of jointly efforts that as young people are facilitating, it will bring up solutions to problems that brought up by climate change. So the discussions that we are facilitating as African youths will be able to be heard on various boards, which will be a very good benefit for Africa as a continent in the combat of climate change, and how best we can create solutions as young people to the peril effects of climate change. Yeah, indeed. And also our leaders should look into it, that policies should be formulated that provides adequate defense on the environment. Indeed, creating stiff measures, the safeguarding and defending the environment. Sure. So everything that, or any effects that cause danger or harm to the environment, must be stiffened, receive the punishment that is in accordance. So that is my submission at this juncture. I really want to say thank you for being with you once again today. Thank you, Gabriel. You take it on.
Thank you, Millimar. And it's great to have you add your voice to the space. It's really great. Before I see Ogwal and Mari, Constance, did you want to say something earlier? I'm just checking. No. Okay, cool. Ogwal and then Mari, and then we'll move to the next section of today.
Okay, yeah. I just think it's of really big importance that COP27 is better than COP26, because everyone thought COP26 is going to be so good, it's going to change so much, and it was kind of simply put a failure. And it's important, according to me, that this COP27 is less about pretty words and more about the action, because that's what happened at last COP. Government officials, they used pretty words, and yet nothing came of it. And I think it's important that this COP27 is focused on action. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Marie. And I just remembered when we spoke last, you told me how to pronounce your name. So it's not Mari, like Mari Biscuits, it's Marie. And so it's great to have you vocalize today that COP27 needs to be better than COP26. less words and more action. I think that there is something that should be on a banner, a poster. That's a message to COP right there, guys. Less words, more action. We heard what Celia mentioned it earlier, and we'll see quite a few similarities echoed throughout today's space. And then lastly for today, for the session, or for the section rather, not session, don't leave yet. Well, would you like to kind of just share your thoughts? Okay, maybe not, but feel free to use the chat if you feel like you want to. That would be great if you could. Cool. Thanks so much to everyone who shared based on last week's feedback session. Well, I see your hand. Go for it. Hand is down. It's okay. We'll get there. We'll get there. But back. One last check. Ogo, would you like to unmute and say your thoughts?
Okay.
Go for it.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm called Mr. Gwan Morris from Uganda. Really, it is my first time being on this platform and for this kind of gathering. I really appreciate the move. I still don't know the organizers, but I'm really grateful for this. As the topic says, climate change right now is a global crisis, not only in Africa, but also in other parts of the world. I was reading some news from Al Jazeera about the climate change impact in France. I don't know if anyone has ever heard about the heat wave. It is really hitting the global, mostly the Europe. So I feel this discussion is very important, basically the climate change. Right from outside here, Uganda, I believe if you don't know, Uganda is eastern part of Africa. Yeah, in the late July, there has been a general outcry, mostly on flooding. It claimed a lot of life, at least 30 got drawn in water just from the runoff. It was really sad, and I believe this could have been as a result of climate change. And if we really knew, or the government had taken in some precaution, this thing wouldn't have taken place. From the assessment that was done out of the incident that took place, there was a conclusion that the communities that was around that area, majorly bordering the river, they did not like carry out a proper sustainability of the environment. They were cutting a lot of trees, and yet they were not replacing. So I feel this platform is very key to making decisions in most of the communities. I would like also to talk about a practical solution when we talk about climate change. Really, we should not just talk at this point, like in the conference. We need a practical solution in the community, and I like the fact that we are centering this discussion right from our communities. So we need a practical solution. Could be tree planting. We need to sensitize the community, or we need to take part, or if possible, we do a kind of lobbying like there are very many NGOs implementing partners, or the local government. We can partner with them and see how we can address these challenges within our communities. Other things we can talk about, like when we talk about climate change, we need to integrate with other measures. We need to bring in the aspect of renewable energy. How do we stop people from, let's say, cutting trees, what? We need to bring in a clear solution that can be like an alternative to why people cut down the trees. Could be like, can we introduce alternative for what? For fuel? Instead of people using charcoal, why don't we get alternative like briquetting, so that they can use it for cooking and for other eating purposes? Then I talk of sensitization. We need to go back to our community or wherever we work. We talk to these people, we sensitize them. I know sometimes back the aspect of climate change has been not very clear to most people in the community. But I like the fact that the crisis that is in place is creating awareness and making people to understand that it is really very important to protect our environment. And lastly, I want to talk about the benefit of this conference. I believe most of us, we want to move on with our career. There are most people who are ready into climate policies, justice, and that is very important. So let's embrace this conference and make it sustainable, so that all the kind of knowledge, the experience we do share here, we can use it somewhere, wherever you will be. I want to thank the organizers once again. I'm very glad for this platform. And I have one special request. Maybe from the genesis of this platform, maybe the speaker or the moderator will answer me. How is the conference? Is it attached to a certain organization or just a group of individuals coming together to organize the conference? Or do we need to register? Or from this platform?
I think I can answer you perfectly there, Ogwal. First of all, thank you so much for your feedback. Your feedback and your comments, I think they add great value. And I saw Sarah adding to it and kind of stopping and thinking and adding to it. And so I think it definitely adds some great value into the space. I think your points about kind of needing that conscientization, that practical action, that kind of groundswell, that youth involvement and engagement is crucial. Your kind of what you're speaking about is kind of hinting at what we're kind of moving into now with this next section. And just so you know, Africa's Youth Voices online conference series is hosted by African Climate Alliance, and I'll make sure that you get all the information about the conference series, how you register, how you involve yourself and incorporate yourself via email after the session. I've got your email since you registered to be a part of today, and I'll make sure everyone gets that. Cool. I think what I'm going to do, Sarah, is just ask you to stop sharing your screen quickly. Then what I'll do quickly is share mine, just with a kind of what a great way for us to stay connected before we move into our next section of today's discussion, which is quite fun, a kind of concept. So Sarah, actually, I'm going to share my screen, but I'd love you to kind of explain it as a way forward for people regarding the bulletin board. There we are.
Thanks, Gabriel, and thanks everybody for your contributions so far. It's been really amazing to try and capture it on the Jamboard, and I hope I've done it justice. And I think what's been interesting, and important coming out of this is obviously we are challenging our leaders towards COP and wanting to come up with discussions around that. But a lot of what's been coming up, is that importance of what are we doing in spite of what the government and what our leaders do? Because even in the event that this COP27 does not live up to the expectations that we hope. What are our plans on the ground, and what are we doing? And I think that that's part of what this bulletin board here that we have is also hoping to achieve. So what we want to do is use this to gather information with one another, to see how we can start to understand what are our individual and organizational focuses. So for example, Gabriel has said they are with Project 90 by 2030, and their focus is on energy, but maybe someone else's focus is on tree planting or on waste or on education. And then what is your either individual or organization or both or movement, what is your social media handle, so that we can also start to connect with each other online and amplify each other's voices and just kind of beat that Instagram algorithm. Yeah, I can add your social media handles there. And then also, if there are key actions or campaigns that you are already going to be in the lead up to COP that you already know about, like, for example, the Mandela Day outreach program that has mentioned the do what you can with what you have with where you are. Maybe there are some others that are also thinking about certain actions and maybe you're going to run a tree planting or whatnot. So if you have any key actions or campaigns, you can put it in there, and then we can connect with one another and we can start to connect the dots so that we're working locally, but we're also connecting on a bigger scale and we're showing solidarity between one another. So that's the idea behind using this bulletin board. Does anyone have any questions before we open that up for people to start filling in?
We'll fill it in the end of the session, just so that everyone knows, because we kind of want to, no, don't apologize. It's just we started a bit later today. And so in this time period, we would have filled that out, but we'll share the link for you to fill it out so that you can fill it out, and then we can kind of engage in the space. But we do have that kind of session that we want to talk about now. But before that, are there any questions? For example, Sarah, I have a question. Can I only put my Instagram down, or can I put down my Facebook too?
Yeah, absolutely. I used Instagram as an example. So whatever social media platform you use, if it's Twitter, if it's TikTok, you can add more than one, just add in there so that we can start, seeing what the online ecosystem looks like of everybody together.
Thanks for that, Sarah. Awesome. And so we hope that this will be a platform that we can all engage in. When we share it, the link, we are going to do a bit of a trial run first to see if anyone can just add it as a comment. If not, we are going to trust you. We're going to open it and let it be editable. And we're going to trust you not to delete other people's lines. We're going to trust you not to interfere with it, because we want this to be a space where we can trust each other to engage with each other. And kind of see it in live time, and not have to have Gabriel go in and accept all comments. Otherwise, it becomes a bit tedious. And so, alternatively, actually, Sarah, what we'll do is we'll ask these questions in a Google form, and then we'll have the spreadsheet open so that everyone can view it. And so we'll share a Google form with this link to a bulletin board, and you'll be able to view the bulletin board link at your convenience as a spreadsheet. Awesome. So what I'm going to do, Panashe is there. Sarah, will you handle the question while I
sorry, quickly. What do we put if you don't actually represent a certain organization?
You put you. You
just put thanks.
Individual is fine. There's no, it's left open for if people do affiliate with an organizational movement, but it's not a necessary to fill in. Yeah.
Awesome. Sarah, perhaps you could just explain what this next section looks like. For example, what the AU letter is, once again, just quickly while I set up the breakout rooms, now that there are more people. And then just begin milling over the questions, or what this discussion section will look like. While I set that up.
Cool. So yeah, I hope you can see my screen now. We've got some guiding questions again. No. wait. There we go. Can you see it now? Is it the right one? Because I've also shared the wrong screen before. Am I sharing myself?
We can see this. Yep, it's not your bank details, don't worry.
Okay. So basically we've got some guiding questions as we go into the next breakout room for the last section of today. And basically we thought that and discussed in the previous session that one of the most tangible things that we can do from this conference is to create campaigns and communications that we've all contributed to that reaches leaders and higher level decision makers. And we thought, what better way from an African perspective to then join the communications that we have and send them to the African Union, which is where a lot of the leaders are represented, and a lot of the leaders who are going to be attending COP are already represented in the African Union. And so we thought to use this as an opportunity to craft an open letter, and then it serves two purposes. One is that we send the letter to the leaders of the AU with all of the demands or the issues and the things we want to see out of COP. But also we publish it online and hopefully across different publications throughout different countries, which also then makes it act as an educational tool and as an awareness raising tool for those who might not know that much about COP, or those who do and want to learn more or want to get involved in a group of people that are coming together in solidarity. And so the questions that we have are, what are the different issues and injustices you face in various communities? So I would say try spend less time on the first question, but use it as an entry point into the rest of the questions so that we can focus on the solutions and what we want to bring into the letter. But we left that question in because it's incredibly important, and that's why we're here. But making sure you leave time to discuss what are leaders and decision makers doing about it or not doing about it. So if we don't know these questions here, maybe these are questions we need to ask ourselves, because we can't write a letter to our leaders and say, you're not doing this, but then they turn around and they say, well, actually, here's the list of things we've done that you didn't think about. So it's just, making space for us to think about what have they already done? Where are they doing well? Where are they falling short? What are communities doing? And then let's dive deeper and spend the most time on this question in terms of what do the communities want our leaders to know, and how do we bring that across then in some points that we can put that into the letter. Okay. I hope I was
perfect, and it is perfect timing too. So what's going to happen is I'm going to open the breakout rooms, and then what I will do is I'm going to jump into each room and I will drop you the link for a Google form, not a Google form, a Google Doc, where you can write down your notes so that you can make sure that all of it is represented. You can either all write it down together, or you can all nominate someone to write it down for you. And then for the next 15 minutes, that's what we'll do. And then for the last 15 to 10 minutes of the day, we'll kind of just do a bit of a feedback session and what are the next steps for us as a group going forward, hoping to end at 7 or just after, to keep time for you and all in the room. So I'm going to open all the rooms, make sure that you press accept and you go into them. And then what we'll do is I'll pop in and I'll drop you those Google Docs so that you can start populating these questions. These questions are also in the Google Docs already, so don't feel like you have to rush it down. And I'm so sorry if we didn't tell you that before and you ran for a piece of paper to write down these questions. And so, the room should be open. I will wait for you all to join there and then see you soon. Play again. There we go. It's awesome that we're all back in the space. I always enjoy the little jam sessions. It's a shame that we have to cut these jam sessions out in the recordings because otherwise copyright will get us. And so what we'd like to do now is offer just let me share it in the chat actually, is a link to the bulletin board. We are going to share the link to the bulletin board in the chat. You can press that link and you'll be able to follow it. And the reason we're doing this is because we want an opportunity for you all to start adding to the bulletin board. while an individual from your group starts doing the feedback. You get 2 minutes for feedback. That's the most you get if we want to end at 7. And yeah, we might even go just 2 minutes after 7, because we have kind of takeaway tasks going forward that we'll share with you ahead of time as well for next week. Not for next week, Monday, we'll share that out. But yeah, please feel free to follow the bulletin board link. In the meantime, does anyone from breakout room 1 want to share their feedback? Breakout room 1? You get 2 minutes. Just about what the conversation. Go for it.
In my group, in group 1, I was in a group with Yotam, Sarah, and John, and a few others. And basically, what we shared, Yotam mentioned with regards to the first question that there is an issue of pollution and waste disposal, and which becomes a lack of resources and lack of waste management in his hometown. And recently there was a cleanup, and the reason and causes for this injustice is because the government blames it on lack of transportation and lack of waste and landfills. And also what Sarah also mentioned is the issue of classism, that the breaching gap between the rich and the poor is that the rich always have access to resources, and they always have access to power, which in most cases the poor are always suffer the consequences and always get the short end of the stick when it comes to environmental injustices. And also there was a problem mentioned of charcoal, the usage of charcoal in Zambia, that it's a huge problem of injustice. And one also mentioned that there is a very steep measure that is placed in terms of the policymakers responding to the issue of charcoal and plastic in their area. And there is also an imposing of fines, and the decision makers are trying to curb the plastic and charcoal issue. And they also mentioned that the injustices are caused by poverty, and that the government has tried to implement policies to share funding with different constituencies and locals, encouraged to participate and have a cause that generates an environmentally friendly product or services. And due to time, we were not able to really complete the other set of questions. But yeah, I think that's what we able to discuss in group 1. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that feedback, Happy. I think what I'll do is I'll also share with everyone the documents, or a shared document where we can all put our answers individually to the space, because we've got a whole month between now and the next session. And so why not populate our thoughts and understandings in those groups, or in our time period of that frame. So yeah, I think it'll be great for us to continue to answer these questions on that document going forward. Cool. 2 minutes from breakout 2. Does someone from breakout 2 want to share quickly? No one? Gasps loudly. No one for breakout 2. I see there's someone on breakout 2's folder, Anonymous Chinchilla. I don't know who you are, but come on, group 2, don't be shy, please. Lisa, why don't you share then in breakout 2 if you don't want to? Oh, I see Vincent. Go for it, Vincent.
Well,
Vincent's gone quiet.
Hello everyone. From group 2, we had the interesting conversation about what are some of the challenges that we experience in our communities, and mostly the main points that were coming out were on clean access to clean water, and mostly in in Kenya, we had a few individuals from Kenya, and the challenges were mostly on corruption and how government involvement is so little when it comes to climate change, and how the government mostly misuse funds which could be allocated and help the community-based organizations and the groups which are formed by the communities and mostly by the youth in fighting for the climate justice. And so you find that the funds that mostly could be used by the communities organizations are misused by the government, and I think that was the biggest challenge that was arising from group 2. And also another point which was also coming out was just still on the government issue. There is need for the government to bridge that gap between the community and the government, because we find that the government is doing so little when it comes to issues to do with the climate change and climate justice compared to what the community is doing. So, and also the communities tries to reach out to the government. This could only be done by the government itself having interest and taking part and parcel of the change that is being championed by the individuals in the community-based levels. I think those are the main points that are coming out from group 2. And in case I'm leaving something out, I think any.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Vincent. I think if anyone would like to kind of finish any other thoughts that Vincent hadn't carried on, please do so in the chat. Also, when we circulate the document for people to add more in, that will be an opportunity as well. Cool. Does anyone from group 3 want to kind of take a quick 2 minutes to share on their thoughts of what was being discussed? Just a quick 2 minutes.
Hello. Hi. Can everyone hear me?
There we go. Go for it. Go for it, Mo.
Okay. All right. So, in my group, I can't remember everyone's names, but I do remember Marie, Elwin, Miguel, and Lena. If I left anyone, I apologize. So primarily, we spoke about how, in general, Africans are suffering disproportionately from the effects of climate change, despite having very low carbon emissions. We then talked about, I gave a little case study of how in Lesotho we are really dealing with a lot of incorrect waste management problems. We have severe pollution issues, but we've only now started taking steps towards decent climate action. So we have like a plastic-free Wednesday nationwide campaign, which is pretty significant for a country that, quite frankly, doesn't really have a climate change policy at all. So then the things that we didn't get to all the other points, but we did discuss whether we think youth are being included in decision making, and the general consensus, from Namibia, Lesotho, Uganda, and South Africa, that that's just not happening. So we talked about how youth are being excluded at a national decision making level. We talked about how decision makers are shunning indigenous knowledge and youth who may have contributions to policy. We even spoke about how there are socioeconomic factors that limit youth participation. And then this is also something happening in various countries in the continent. Someone spoke about how in Malawi, cultural perspectives and gender inequalities actually intersect to further limit participation in grassroots activism, potentially. So I think if anyone else has anything to say, we can join in, but those are the points I remember.
Thanks for that, Mo. And I love that there was a kind of derailing, but still such value brought into the conversation. I think, I think this is kind of the point, is that even though we give kind of guiding questions, they are just that, guiding. And sometimes they help guide a conversation that needs to flow in that moment. And so it's great to hear from you about your group, and please feel free to pop that in the chat, even from group 3. Looking at the time, Group 4, do you want to quickly give a quick moment of update on what your feedback is in that section? Rihanna?
Okay, sure. So we said that one thing regarding the different issues and injustices that we face. So we say that one thing that lacks is the inconsistency in the way that things are addressed. And we basically established that there is a disconnect. So the intersectional lens is there and people do identify the issues, but they don't operate collectively. So so the way we view the issues and how they link up to each other, there's a disconnect. And so the question always arises is how do we build a collective movement to take on these issues, and how do we tie the climate crisis to those issues? So some of the things that we looked at was intergenerational climate injustice. The younger generations will most of the time, or if not, spend all of their lives dealing with land loss and degradation and fewer resources and things like that. And then the effects of climate change can also intensify pre-existing social inequalities, especially when it comes to gender. And this was obviously another issue that we established. Women also often bear the brunt of the climate crisis and climate disasters, and they depend more heavily on natural resources like water and firewood, especially if they're coming from more vulnerable communities. So obviously, if those items become scarce, and they may need to travel further for them, and that obviously means more time doing unpaid domestic labor. And obviously, in some areas, that poses a greater risk of gender-based violence. And climate change and poverty also form a very vicious cycle. And if left unchecked, then the climate change could push up to millions more people into poverty over the next few years, which is obviously going to be a big issue in our country. And some of the things that we said what our leaders are doing, there was a particular case we spoke about in South Africa with a flood, and the leaders didn't deal with it effectively. The Disaster Management Act wasn't effective either, and the communities were therefore, since they are vulnerable communities, were not really prepared because their houses are built on floodplains. And this issue has occurred before, so it wasn't anything new, but the way that the government approached the issues didn't change. And so it wasn't very helpful, and they have the potential and resources to make the change, but they often lack the will to do so. And we also said that poor communities struggle to fight against climate change, as perhaps the community or the individuals that make up the community face everyday struggles such as poverty. So there's a very strong need for leaders to take responsibility and step into their role, because their lack of action is in fact costing lives. And then in terms of what the communities are doing, we said that the engagement is there, but once again, the link between the issues are not there. So that is something that we need to work on, and that's something that we need to bring to everyone's attention.
I'm really happy because you're kind of talking into a little bit about our takeaway task for this month. Thank you so much for sharing, Rihanna, in regards to your breakout group. And the last breakout group, I know that you have some things to say because I can see your document. Would you like to give us a quick read over of that document so that we can kind of hear everyone's thoughts and then pull the session to a close today? Breakout group 5, anyone?
Okay, I'm happy. I'm happy to go.
Rohini.
So we didn't have time to answer all the questions, but let me just quickly go past the ones we did. So for question 1, what are the injustices and issues you face locally? Some people mentioned the lack of equal access to resources such as water and electricity. We also made the connection of the effects of climate change to gender-based violence and how there is a lot of intersectionality. We talked about poor infrastructure and how that affects different communities. And a big thing was being excluded where decisions are being made. For question 2, where are your leaders? What are your leaders and decision makers doing about your issues? And there was a large consensus that not much is being done. for me personally, I know that there was minimal conversation had locally after a local organization relentlessly pushed for just conversation had about the lack of access to water. And there wasn't, so far as I know, currently there was nothing done. No intervention had concerning clean water, and none of the policies that are being discussed via media or are spoken about are actually being implemented. And then a large part in whether or not specific issues are addressed, like who's being affected by these issues and the location of these issues, is sadly a lot of conversation kind of came down to environmental racism and how privilege and where you are in your local environment does create this disparity of what issues are going to be addressed and what issues are not. But yeah, that is all we could kind of respond to, but hopefully we can discuss this more and type in this document more.
Excellent. Thanks, Mohini. I saw, in the words of your group, shucks, because I see it in the top of your document. Shucks, we didn't have time to finish. But yeah, I think there is going to be opportunity for everyone to add more to the space and more information to the space. But acknowledging the time and not wanting to pull more of your time away. Also, I know data bundles only last so long. I'm going to kind of bring us to a close today, if that's okay, with just our takeaway task going forward. And I'll share my screen for that, and then we'll go from there. But our takeaway task for this coming month, basically, is to, there we go, is to think of and discuss with your communities. So your community can be your actual community, or it can be your community of people that you work with, your friends, your family, campaigns that we can run for us as a collective to push on the ground and online that would work for our mission of this conference series, which is to build solidarity, to build a united voice when it comes to elevating messages to COP, as well as regional, national, local, provincial, continental wide understandings of what we want done at COP27 this year. And so, in essence, this is our takeaway task. We'll make sure all these information is shared with you so that you can kind of take away the task and come back next week. I keep saying next week, next month, with all the, next month on the 8th of September, with all kind of your feedback. And we'll look forward to that space. I think next month we'll start a bit earlier, so we've got enough time to factor in everything. And then lastly, forms. So there'll be a form that we'll share. These forms we'll share with you. We've got the form that says previous sessions, so that's where a resource drive will be formed. I know I'm using the word form a lot, but a resource drive will be. And so we'll make sure you get that. The data reimbursement form, please make sure that you have registered with the name. When you fill out your data, you have it in your registration name, so we can make sure that you, what's on the register is what's on the data reimbursement form. If there are any issues, feel free to email me. I am happy to help. Data takes about 7 days to finalize everyone's, for the max 7 days, but oftentimes we get it done within 5. But your data and reimbursement will come, we assure you. And if there are issues and aspects of problems, don't hesitate to email me personally, where we will kind of handle it. Sometimes it's difficult if you message on the social media, because the person on the social media doesn't necessarily know how to handle that situation, because she isn't part of the running of these workshop conference series. And so feel free to email me personally. I'll make sure it gets done. Lastly, we want to boogie a little bit more, but we want to boogie with your recommendations. And so we are developing a Spotify playlist that will eventually turn into a YouTube playlist and an Apple playlist or whatever. But basically, you put down your favorite song that you want to add and the name of the artist. And then you rate it how good it is from a scale of 1 to 10. And we add it to the list. And then lastly, actions and campaigns bulletin board, which some of you have already populated. It's going to be amazing to see and amazing to engage with one another on that. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for kind of being in the space. Cool. Before we officially pull to a close, Sarah, do you have any other comments you'd like to add?
Just a big thanks to everybody for your time and energy today, and we'll be sending everything via email. And just, yeah, I said in the chat as well for your favorite songs, artists, please we're trying to build the Africa Youth Voices playlist, so artists based in Africa, please. Yeah, and thank you, everybody.
So I'm so sorry for the Billie Eilish fans, but this is not going to be a Billie Eilish playlist. Cool. Thank you all so much. We wish you the best and we bid you farewell.